You know, really, in all seriousness, folks, I have a lot of respect for anyone who runs for this office. You know, it's really, you know, a very generous gesture on their part. There's no money involved, as you all know. Not much glory, I think, either. So I think we all have to respect anybody who steps up and throws their hat in the ring for this. So having said that, the format is very simple. We are going to have 4 official questions that our moderator, Karen O'Quinn, is going to ask all the candidates, our Dunsmuir librarian. By the way, I'm supposed to say welcome on behalf of the Dunsmuir Library. And thank you. So the first thing Karen's going to do is to read those 4 questions. So if any of you have questions, you know, from the audience you'd like to ask the candidates, listen to the questions she's going to read so you don't repeat, you know, what we're going to ask them. And then I guess we're going to pass out the, I can do that actually.
Well, why don't we read the questions and then people can just help themselves.
So raise your hand after she's read them. Raise your hand if you have a question. I'll give you a card and something to write with. Karen.
And if we need more paper, we know.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Procedural question.
Yes, okay.
Would it be possible to do that after we've heard what the candidates say instead of before?
I think so, yeah. Yes.
Then we would have
you can do it either way. Either if you have one already, write it down. If not, take a card and you can write it afterwards. I think that would work, yes. Yes. Okay.
Give her a pen, please.
Okay. Why don't you read the question?
Oh,
Tim?
has her.
We'll have a card, please. Thank you.
Well, can she read the questions first, and then I'll give you the cards?
Tim, could you move?
Have a chance,
you
folks.
get me really confused if you.
Everyone will have a chance.
All I got is your head right now. So, Kara, could you go to the center and read the questions?
I'm more than happy to do that. So, the first question, and we'll ask them again individually, but this is for the audience. Are you satisfied with the progress being made in upgrading our water and sewer infrastructure? Why or why not? Please be specific.
Can you repeat that?
Certainly. Are you satisfied with the progress being made in upgrading our water and sewer infrastructure? Why or why not? Please be specific. Second question. Can you share with us your ideas for economic development, specifically for bringing more businesses and jobs to Dunsmuir, that you as a council member could facilitate? Third question. Do you support a regular inspection of Dunsmuir's downtown historic district buildings? Why or why not? And the last question. If you could accomplish one thing in your 4 years on the City Council, what would that be? Actually, there's one more question if we have time. As you know, it's difficult for people who want to move to Dunsmuir to find housing to purchase or rent. Do you have any thoughts on how we can increase our stock of available housing here, especially affordable housing? Do you feel the city's efforts in this regard are adequate? If not, how would you improve them?
Okay.
So those are the questions.
Okay, let me pass out cards to people. Excuse me, just going to sneak around here. Who would like an index card?
What is exactly the purpose of
And a pen. You need a pen. Let me know if you need a pen.
Any questions down that you may have for our prospective council members?
Yeah, I do.
Excuse me, Tim. Tim, here's another card, empty card, if someone needs it.
Could I have another one? These were my notes I made for myself.
I don't actually have another one. Tim has the cards. Could you write on the back?
You're pretty exciting
Well, I
here.
could, but I want to hang on to my...
Put your name on it, we'll give it back to you.
Yes, I am.
These are,
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Cards about it. Okay.
Do you have any extra cards there?
I do.
Barbara would like another card, please.
Barbara?
Tim
Okay.
Heck, what's the name, Brett?
Here you go.
Got it?
They're good friends.
Thank you.
And we're doing opening statements now.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the format. Everybody has 3 minutes to respond to the question. We'll do one at a time. I may vary who's going to go first, who's going to go second and third. No interrupting and no questions from the audience till all the questions have been asked and we're done. Catherine's going to be our timekeeper. She will raise her hand when you have 30 seconds left. And then she'll call the time. And we're definitely not going to go over because it appears that there are plenty of council or audience members that have other questions. There are refreshments in back. If anybody's interested, please help yourselves. So with no further ado, we'll begin with Juliana.
Thank you. My name is Juliana Lucchese. I'm originally from a suburb called West Dallas in just outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I have a bachelor's degree in applied science from the University of Wisconsin-Stout, which is in West Dunsmuir, Wisconsin, which is where I fell in love with small cities. Grew up in Milwaukee, a couple 100,000 people, so a little bit bigger than here. And then Menominee, Wisconsin, where I lived for that time, was about 4,600 people, and I just kind of grew to love the quieter atmosphere, the outdoors. Menominee is in part of a rolling hill environment in Wisconsin. From there, I went to get my Master's of Science in Urban and Regional Planning with a focus on economic development and environmental policy at the University of Iowa in Iowa City, Iowa, which is a United Nations education city. So they focus on literature, especially there in the city of Iowa City. I was hired for the city of Mount Shasta as their city planner, and so I relocated to California with never being here, which was really fun. Got off a plane on a Thursday, started work on a Monday about a little over 2 years ago, and I've loved it ever since. I appreciate the area and the natural beauty that we have, and then I've been actually living in the city of Dunsmuir for about 1.5 years in North Dunsmuir with my significant other, Michael. I really want to put myself forward as a viable council member to help the city of Dunsmuir, especially with my technical background. I have an extensive network at the state and federal level with disaster planning, infrastructure planning, as well as financial policy planning. And I feel that I have those abilities, those skills, and that network to really help the city of Dunsmuir in the next 4 years. I know I'm a newer resident, but I really embrace that newness as a way to listen more than really telling you what I'd like to see here. I'd like to hear what the community has to say. And some of the things that I've heard so far that we need to start working on is our financial situation with the city of Dunsmuir and making sure that we're not increasing rates on any of our enterprises too much, if at all. I'd like to stay away from that if possible. Another one is safety, looking at code enforcement as well as nuisance abatement for problem properties. I know that leash laws are a huge concern here in the city and something that gets talked about a lot, and that's something that needs to be addressed. And then finally, planning for youth and families and connecting with the Dunsmuir School District and trying to make sure that the city's goals and their goals align more to help our youth feel more connected to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian.
Yeah.
Matthew?
I'm running for Dunsmuir City Council to inject new ideas and vitality to our city government. I'd like to repair our crumbling infrastructure, clean our neighborhoods, fill our empty storefronts with truly sustainable businesses, and bring to Dunsmuir the state and federal resources available to small towns. In short, to make Dunsmuir prosper. I can agree, I know we all would like that to happen. These goals will not be accomplished overnight, but without hard, determined work by our city council, they will not even begin. My love for this region and town, its natural beauties and its people, was formed in my early youth and continues to inspire gratitude to this day. I was born in South Siskiyou County, between Mount Shasta and Weed. I grew up in this wonderful natural beauty. I attended Golden Eagle Charter School from kindergarten through 12th grade. It was a real pleasure, and that school has produced wonderful goods for our community, both in Dunsmuir, Mount Shasta, Weed, and all of Siskiyou County. Upon graduation, I had the honor to represent Dunsmuir Rotary as a Rotary Youth Exchange Ambassador to Switzerland for a year. This was a truly remarkable experience. I got to go, actually, and as crazy as it sounds, from little alpine town to little alpine town, giving presentations about Dunsmuir to people in Europe. And they were fascinated to see people who lived the way they live, from one mountain region to another. And it was quite special, and I thank Dunsmuir Rotary for all their involvement in this community, including that. I attended Thomas Aquinas College, where I received a degree in, or a bachelor's degree in philosophy, and yeah, I received that degree there before returning home in 2016, where I've been a base manager at the Mount Shasta Ski Park and a California Realtor. I guess in closing, people say in passing, Dunsmuir has so much potential. I talked about this at our last forum, and it just stuck with me. But us who live here know it has potential, not in spite of its citizens, but because of it. You know, you hear that a lot, that we have potential, and the potential does lie in our ability to appreciate being here. It's a beautiful place to live. It comes with its hardships. We all experience the hardships. It's tough sometimes. You know, we work 2, 3 jobs, or if we're on a fixed income, there's not a lot of options for us. So I do appreciate all the people that choose to live here. And there are many things that I hope to see achieved in Dunsmuir, but it must be remembered that the City Council is not 5 people, sorry, it's not 1 person, it's 5 people, and the citizens of Dunsmuir are not 5 people, but 1,500. And it's very important that policies are formed that work for all of us, not just personal interest. Now, personal interest, if they want to do something that can create good within the town, that is a wonderful coincidence, and we will encourage it. But we do need policies that work for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody.
Marty?
I'm Marty. I think that I don't see any strange faces in the audience. I have been on the City Council for close to 3 years. I was appointed at first to fill a seat, and then I was elected in 2016 by the citizens.
Speak up. I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not a loud person, so projecting my voice is, even with a microphone.
Can you stand up?
And I am asking for your forgiveness for having glasses on, but I also participated in a forum on Friday night, and I had a bright floodlight, stage light in my eyes for 2 hours straight. And I had burned my eyes a long time ago, and it has left me totally devastated this week. So I have a light-induced headaches and migraines. So I am a graduate at the U of A. I'm actually a transplant to the United States. My whole family lives in Hungary. I lived in Caracas. And we came to this country through what usually happens in Latin American countries. They had a revolution. I graduated with honors from both high school and college. As a matter of fact, I had 3 scholarships, all of them academic. And I managed to get 2 degrees at the same time, one in business and one in design. I actually was groundbreaker in San Francisco. I was the first female that was ever hired in the back offices of the brokerage industry. So, you know, I'm a little bit used to, you know, working through hard situations. I have 3 daughters and 4 great-grandchildren. It's one of the reasons why I'm actually here. When I retired, I had already, since I worked in San Francisco, you know, I'm quite familiar with the area. But I have a daughter that lives in Mount Shasta. And when my final client's businesses was all done in Utah, I figured that I knew about snow. So I was willing to try out Dunsmuir, and I have here by choice. During my 3 years on the City Council, I am on the Finance Committee. I'm on a few committees. My time is up.
Okay. I didn't hear the bell ring, sorry.
No. Well, she put her hand up, so.
That's 30
That's a
seconds.
30-second.
Do you want to finish?
Well, I'm on the Cannabis Task Force, which has just finished its work. I Also have worked with the Botanical Gardens, the Garden Club, Dolly Park, the Fire Safe Council, have actually put together a grant that we were the only ones that were awarded. So Dunsmuir now has an up-to-date, state-of-the-art community wildfire protection plan, a step towards getting our mitigation plan.
Time up. Okay, Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Peter Arth, and I know some of you, but not all of you. Whether I know you or not, thank you for coming tonight and breathing life into this American experiment called democracy. I think we are very fortunate to have enough people interested in leading our city that however the election turns out, it's a cause of celebration for all of us. I have started to walk the neighborhoods. I live in the historic district on Sacramento Avenue, but I will next be walking in North Dunsmuir, and if you see one of these on your doorknob, that'll be me knocking on your door, and maybe I missed you. But in terms of theme, and I really appreciate for our local newspaper the excellent article that they ran today. Not that many people read the newspaper anymore, apparently. I do. Social media is the thing. But I thought it was an excellent job of focusing on our backgrounds and the issues. So in my piece, I say here are some of the big issues I want to tackle. Number one, replacing worn-out infrastructure while keeping utility rates affordable. That deals with our water and sewer systems. Number two, make sure our city is safe. And I love that we have a community with children. I love that we have a community with seniors, and I'm a senior. Coming from San Francisco, this feels much safer to me in Siskiyou County and Dunsmuir than where I was down there. But we're at risk. The third is to demand a fair and efficient budgeting process. The remarks that Tim Holt made are exactly right. Whoever sits in the 5 chairs, they have a very small staff, a city manager, a revenue officer, a small public works department, some administrative positions, and somehow they're supposed to move the city of Dunsmuir forward. And so I will tag on to Matthew's point. I see so much potential for our city, and I will simply add to it, the motto of Dunsmuir High School is Dunsmuir Pride. We need to get our pride back. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll begin with the questions, and I think I'll start with Matthew first. Are you satisfied with the progress being made in upgrading our water and sewer infrastructure? Why or why not? Please be specific.
Okay. Well, our pipes our infrastructure is incredibly old. In some places, the original. I was just walking down here from my house, and I saw on the corner of the sidewalk there was an opening for, I think, a sewer release, and the cement there said, it was crumbling, it said 1926. That's a serious issue. It's been a long time since 1926, and if things haven't been repaired regularly, and the cost hasn't been shared over that century, it's going to be very difficult to get to the point where we're proactive instead of reactive with our infrastructure. I'm very pleased with any progress that has been made. My understanding is a great deal of water work on the water system has been done in the last few years, and that the sewer systems, it's the primary concern right now. But I don't think we've had enough progress in getting to the point where we can receive the federal or state grants that are sometimes available for this infrastructure. We sit here at the headwaters of the Sacramento River, and the rest of the state is very appreciative of our water. And it's very important to them. We need to leverage in as much as we can that relationship and get them to help us facilitate our own water needs.
Thank you, Matthew. Juliana?
So similar to what Matthew talked about, it's a national disaster waiting to happen with infrastructure, not just water, wastewater, but also our roadway systems. And the city of Dunsmuir is not outside of that. And there are issues in the system. My understanding right now is that city staff did get 2 water projects that have been funded in the last year that they're working on. But there's always more that we can do, especially going for those grant dollars that aren't putting that burden on our taxpayers or ratepayers. One of the things the state of California likes to do is put in place mandates for cities like our wastewater treatment facility upgrade, and then they don't like to fund that mandate. So I think working with our city engineer consultant, working with our city staff to go and get those grants to meet that difference is going to be essential in the next coming years. Like I said, our wastewater treatment facility does need a critical upgrade, as well as the rest of our water systems and wastewater systems. So I think moving forward, you know, I'm proud of the work that has been going on for the last year or two. I think the new city manager has a background in public works and is a good person to have right now as we move closer and closer to getting to a better place. But I think there's more that we can do to leverage our position, as Matthew said, as, you know, close to the headwaters of the Sacramento River, and really kind of bring that up to the state side and really talk about getting more state dollars, getting more federal dollars through the Department of Agriculture. They have a program for rural development that I think that we would fit into without having to pay off loans. They do have grant guarantees for smaller cities like Dunsmuir. So I'm not satisfied. I don't think anyone is ever going to be satisfied with the state that our infrastructure is in now, but I'm hopeful for the future as we work with our city staff and our city engineer consultant to alleviate those concerns.
Thank you. Monty, would you like me to read this?
Yes, again, please, thank you.
Are you satisfied with the progress being made in upgrading our water and sewer infrastructure? Why or why not? Please be specific.
I'm going to discuss water first, and we did have a rate study, and the citizens, you know, and just keep going like that, Barbara, and I'll try to project my voice. And we had a rate increase. There was a committee, a task force, you know, to look at the rate structure for water, and I didn't totally agree on some of the details on it, but as a whole, you know, I accepted it. We're on a 5-year plan. We, as a city, do not actually qualify as a disadvantaged community anymore. And we have gone after every grant, federal, agricultural, low income, whatever, to try to pay for the infrastructure that is not have to be paid for by Dunsmuir. Unfortunately, there is not as much as everybody perceives there to be. We have a great city manager that does understand this. We were lucky that Bryce Craig, you know, and Mr. Deutsch sat on that task force. They're well aware, and Mr. Craig also sat on Siskiyou County board, and he brought in, you know, some more grants. Our city manager actually sits on a state water board, so he is aware of all aspects of, you know, opportunities. Am I pleased with our water structure? I'd like for it to be faster. But I also face the reality that it's going as fast as we can. The reason we have a 5-year plan is because we have to come up to a certain level, you know, before we're eligible for even more grants. And this was all explained to the cities, to the citizens, you know, when the water rate structure, when we had the 218, and the citizens, you know, were smart enough to realize that they're not going to get something for nothing. You know, the infrastructure has been allowed to deteriorate because it's always been a political, you know, battle, and it's always been pushed forward. We don't have any more forwards to go to. We have to tackle it. Let me just say on the sewer, we don't really have anything that we can discuss. Peter is the only one right here that is sitting on the present sewer task force. Nothing has been published publicly. The city council has not been given any information. So it's not wise for me to talk about something that has not ever been presented.
Thank you. Peter, would you like me to read the question again?
No, I am aware of the question.
Thank you.
And for those who didn't read the article in the newspaper or know about me, I spent most of my career as a staff attorney for the California Public Utilities Commission, headquartered in San Francisco, responsible for setting rates and terms of service for consumers, the biggest electric utilities, the biggest telecommunication utilities, but also the smallest water and sewer utilities. So my first visit to Dunsmuir was in 1973 as a young staff attorney dealing with the Shasta Retreat water system, which was privately owned at the time, and the city decided, Chris Stromsis was the city attorney, we had a 3-day hearing. The smartest thing was for the city to annex the system, which they did, but it's a very difficult situation where a utility with less than 2,000 connections is almost by definition uneconomic. When I was asked to serve on the council in 2008, I just moved here. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know the council. But what we were confronted with as council members is the State Water Resources Control Board was fining us $3,000 a day because our wastewater discharge plant was putting pollutants into the headwaters of the Sacramento that weren't properly being dispersed downstream, and they said, you've got to fix it. And the city for a while said, you know what, if the state's got a problem, the state can fix it. We're just going to fold our arms and not raise increases. I thought it was wrong then. I think it's wrong now. I'm proud of the community for stepping up. But I think we're all underinformed. As a member of this committee that Mari refers to, here's the news for everybody that lives in Dunsmuir. Pace Engineering is recommending substantial increases in our sewer rates. Pace Engineering is recommending substantial increases in our solid waste rates. Mayor Deutsch sits on the committee with me, and I think that ought to be part of the campaign discussion. How much can this community take, and what is fair for those of us that are on fixed incomes? Thank you.
Thank you. Juliana, can you share with us your ideas for economic development, specifically for bringing more businesses and jobs to Dunsmuir that you as a council member could facilitate?
I think some of the things that we can do that are easy and cost effective is just talking to our successful businesses now. Taking a look at Dunsmuir Brewery and seeing what went well for them, what were some difficulties they may have, and then maybe taking some of those barriers away that were difficult when those successful businesses, Salt and Savor is another very good one. Those are the businesses that are going to start employing some of our more local people. Other things to take a look at is maybe there's some regional needs. So what other industries are in Mount Shasta and Weed that may need, some complementary industries. For example, solid waste is a really good portion. We are mandated right now in the next couple of years to do composting for all restaurant facilities in the jurisdiction. We don't have an industrial composting facility, so I think there are things that the city council can do in conjunction with the city manager. The city staff does most of the work, and city council does the direction, but I think city council and the city manager can take a look at if there's any city-owned property that could be leveraged for an industrial composting facility. Those develop good jobs as well as providing a service to the residents of Dunsmuir as well as those businesses. And then we're also meeting a state mandate in that as well. So I think, again, it's kind of a two-step process. It's looking at what are businesses that are succeeding now that are doing well. Again, asking Pusher what's going well. Or maybe if there are needs in the future, maybe there are some businesses that are doing really well that want to do better. And there are some things the city can do working with Jedi, working with Siskiyou Economic Development Council to enhance that so they can start funding more positions. And then again, the second part is looking at what are our regional needs and maybe providing some state-of-the-art services that we're not already getting that could provide jobs as well as really great products for the rest of the community.
Thank you. Monty, would you like me to read the question again?
Yes, just to...
Can you share with us your ideas for economic development, specifically for bringing more businesses and jobs to Dunsmuir that you as a council member could facilitate?
That is such a complex question because you have tied in into one question a multitude of directions. As a city, we can only encourage private enterprise to come into a city. As a city and as a councilman, we can only encourage the city to facilitate the prospect of private enterprise to come in. I know most of the business owners that are here, they're mostly small, single, unless they're in the hotel business. And even in the hotel business, they've been generational. Businesses that Juliana mentioned, Salt and Savor and Edmondson, started as a single person. When he took out Kiva loans, I was one of the first ones to give him a Kiva loan. He's expanded his business. These are single entrepreneurs. They have found their little niches. We don't have large industry in Dunsmuir anymore. We don't have the capacity as some of our sister cities to the north have of land. I have encouraged, because we have an enterprise, the airport, we have land up there, to look into industrial uses up there. But again, that requires having an infrastructure of delivering water and all the other services that right now are done. Developers are not apt to come in, without those, with that. Mount Shasta has a huge piece of property called the Landing.
No, that was a call, I saw.
Oh, sorry.
Called the Landing. It's been in their possession for years, and they still have not been able to develop it. So I encourage development, but as a councilman personally, I don't know if I can do that except to facilitate anybody to that wants to start a business to make it easy for them. I helped facilitate the last one, the Dohook. I sit on the DBG committee, and I facilitated a loan for them from the city. And then I plastered their business all over Facebook to make sure that everybody went in there. And my time is up.
Okay. Peter. Peter.
I'm going to steal most of Juliana's answer in the interest of time. With the notion, this is sort of what I am about. I moved up here with the notion that all of the empty buildings in downtown Dunsmuir were a tragedy that did not need to happen. So if we all go out the front door and look at the Cornet building, that was a dead 5 and dime that now has 3 businesses in it. The third and most recent is the expansion of the Dunsmuir Brewery Works, who will start brewing beer in the back of this old abandoned 5 and dime. The energy to brew the beer will come from the sun. There's a complete photovoltaic system. The beer will be brewed with the best water on earth. It provides jobs. It provides a reason to come to Dunsmuir. And in my piece, I just go down the line. The Dunsmuir Community Resource Center, Pop's Performing Arts Center, the Brown Trout Building, the Dohook Bakery. And if we can work cooperatively, Juliana mentioned Jedi. Before I accept a major tenant to to start a new business in Dunsmuir or loan them money, which I do personally, just like the city, you need to go to JEDI. You need to work with the Siskiyou Economic Development Council so that you will be successful. You won't be the next great disappointment. But we need jobs, and we need jobs that pay decent wages. So I'm very proud of the progress we've made. There's one of the newest businesses is owned by Carol back in the rear of the building, the Magic Mountain Massage Studio right next door. She and her husband moved from Pennsylvania to Dunsmuir. She has a passion to succeed here. She thinks she can, and I think it's tremendously exciting if the city can support young entrepreneurs and old entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Peter.
We're going to be okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Matthew, would you like me to read the question again?
Sure.
Can you share with us your ideas for economic development, specifically for bringing more businesses and jobs to Dunsmuir that you, as a council member, could facilitate?
Certainly. The first part of the question, it's very difficult to start a business. I've had some friends who've done it successfully and some who've had to pull away and move on to another thing and succeed elsewhere. But it's a very personal choice. You know, I think people can see best where there's an opportunity and how they can facilitate that opportunity to support themselves and a few others and provide a service or good for people. And that's done on a large scale. In fact, on such a large scale that we've shifted throughout my lifetime in Siskiyou County. When I was born in the 90s, all the mills were shutting down. And it was a tough time. All these towns were built kind of with that as its backbone. Dunsmuir had the railroad. And so we're at a point in this process where we're shifting to a service-based economy. What the city can do, the city can't force people to come here and start businesses, of course, but they can get the word out that they're open to business. Now, the city needs to be a good partner in that process. The city needs to take care of the services proper to the city so that those are in place that allow private people to come in and flourish. And I do know, I mean, look at Dunsmuir before the Dunsmuir Brewery, as was pointed out here before. It would hardly be the same place, yet that business employs many people in town, and it's a point of pride. It's a public forum where we all gather. One more Dunsmuir Brewery would be a great deal for our town. Not another brewery, but another business like it. And then another after that. It'll have a cascading effect, and Dunsmuir will be the place to be. I think the city should be at the forefront of advertising and organizing events that are citywide that bring tourism to Dunsmuir. We don't want our water rates to go up. We only have a few. We don't want our property taxes to go up too fast. We only have a few other options. One is sales tax and transient occupancy tax. So if people come here and stay in Dunsmuir hotels, the city benefits from that. And we need to really capitalize on that, because if we can increase that, it'll help our financial situation without raising rates. And it'll also help anyone who's considering a business, because the difficulty with Dunsmuir right now is to have a successful business, you need to capture a very large percent of the market. So if we can simultaneously increase the market and support these young entrepreneurs and old entrepreneurs, they'll be in a good situation. Because if you only need to capture 10% of the tourism market to be successful, then a lot of businesses will be possible in Dunsmuir that are not possible today.
Thank you, Matthew.
Good answer.
The correct word is mature.
Mature.
Thank you, Barbara.
Oh, is it time for questions?
No.
We're going to start going out.
Oh, I see.
We can start organizing, sorry.
What's happening? Do we have some more questions?
Okay, let me, I thought I was gonna read it, reread it, so let me just reword it so it's clear
Sorry
to
for the
you.
interruption.
Okay. Let's go with Peter first. Do you support a regular inspection of Dunsmuir's downtown historic district buildings? Why or why not?
Yes, I do. And the why is that Dunsmuir is geographically a very small city with a very compact downtown. And I am very proud of all the work that Ron McLeod and others have put into creating the historic district. It happened decades ago, before I moved here, but the work of those who came before me inspired me to say these buildings can be saved. And so that has been my mission for the past 10 years. It disturbs me deeply that the city of Dunsmuir is not interested in enforcing the historic district ordinance that protects all these buildings. It disturbs me deeply that the city of Dunsmuir does not even have a code enforcement officer. It disturbs me deeply that the city of Dunsmuir says citizens can't do anything because if citizens like Tim or Barbara or someone else try to do inspections and get non-compliant owners to do the right thing, well, that's a problem. So the crown jewel of Dunsmuir to me is the downtown historic district with its railroad history, and I'm going to fight until I'm dead to preserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Marty, do you support a regular inspection of Dunsmuir's downtown historic district buildings? Why or why not?
Yes and no. It's a legal issue, for one. We have had forums. Public's been invited. A lot of people have not attended. You know, with our city attorney, you know, explaining some of the legal ramifications of doing that. You know, we have tried, in fact, something interesting that Peter just brought up, that regular citizens have no power to do anything. Actually, they do. All they have to do is fill out a form if they feel that something is wanting. And the city, although it does not at the moment have any court enforcement officer, will look into it. So the citizens have not lost any power to do that. What is being resisted is, you know, an organized effort, you know, to coerce owners, which you get into actual legal ramifications. Code enforcement is not something that is not, every single small city faces it. I was at a League of California City meeting last, I think September last year. Every single city complains about the whole thing. How do they deal with code enforcement? There's always the one. Yeah, and then they get into legal battles. Well, for us to get into legal battles, just produce more areas where we don't have enough revenue, you know, to spend, you know, legal expenses. We've even, you know, it was Bryce and our city manager and I ended up in a specific meeting, and lo and behold, not only small cities, Weed was there, and we even thought about, you know, joining forces, Weed, Dunsmuir, Mount Shasta, and writing the same ordinance and getting together and hiring a super duper, you know, bulldog of a code enforcement officer that would take care of the three cities, because the same tenants seem to be applying or we're having the same problem with that.
Thank you. Matthew?
Thank you. In answer to whether there should be regular inspections to the historic district, I believe with matters of safety, the city should always inspect its domains for public safety hazards. And there are some significant public safety hazards, and I think those should be addressed as a priority. When it comes to what we'd like to see in Dunsmuir, I think we should always be ready to encourage private property owners to work with us and partner with us. If it crosses the threshold and becomes a public nuisance to a large degree and affects our community negatively, I think the city needs to take that very seriously and consider all reasonable remedies. I don't think it's smart to rush into lawsuits. That's costly, and we certainly don't want to, in the end, we really don't want to force people to sell their buildings or leave. And if they don't have the funds, perhaps they should consider readjusting their holdings to fix up their buildings. That's a difficulty. I think we should help them be proactive and providing them with resources and paths forward for some of these old buildings.
Thank you. Juliana?
Thank you. I'm going to give a good planning answer and say it depends. It depends on what the original goal of those inspections are. Are those inspections for safety? Similar to what Matthew said, I think under the purview of a city, the purview of a city is to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of the people who live there. And so if the inspections are there for safety measures, yes, we should do those. You know, it gets very tricky when you start getting into historical districts because there's special rules, you have to use special materials, and I think you encroach upon a very sensitive topic for building owners who own those buildings. Nobody likes to be told what to do with their property, and so you have to kind of ride that line very close. But I think if the inspections were done in a way that respected those building properties' options of color choice, material choice, as long as they're with the district that's in place, but really has the goal of ensuring safety, then that's what we do. As far as if it's being used to enhance the downtown, I don't necessarily know that that's the tool to use. We always talk about there's proactive things to help people out, and there's reactive things like enforcement. And we like to use the proactive route rather than the enforcement. So what can we do to reach out to these people to bring their buildings more up to date? Are there historical programs? There are state programs that would help historical districts. There are programs on the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, which I believe Mari brought up earlier. There are ways that we can help out business owners get to the end goal that we hope to have as residents and city council members. I think that just needs to be sat down and clarified very clearly what we intend to do and what we're trying to accomplish. There isn't just one way to get to that end goal, and I think we need to employ as many different solutions as possible. Working again with our city staff, I know it's been brought up, we don't have a code enforcement agent, but looking into some of the options with that to try and proactively work with people, education, as well as pointing out programs to help them get to that future we want to see.
Thank you. If you could accomplish one thing in your 4 years on the city council, what would that be?
Well, I've been on the city council for 3.5 years, so I actually am really proud that, you know, I'm fire oriented. I was president of the Fire Safe Council. Prior to sitting on council, I was able to get as small a council as we are, that I managed, you know, quite a considerable amount, over 150,000. We cleared out the 11 acres down south of Manfredi's, and we did a lot of work in Shasta Retreat. But then, you know, once I joined the city council, those type of funds are really drying up. It's really getting impossible to get the kind of grants, especially for small, you know, councils, the paperwork. And so I started looking into other agencies, you know, where we could get money for fire suppression. And that was FEMA. And because we do, you know, guard not only the Sacramento River, the railroad, you know, the I-5 corridor, we're really an important position, importantly, to stop all of that. I also was able to get a grant, and the only grant that was actually awarded in Siskiyou County is to our teeny little Dunsmuir Fire Safe Council to write our community wildfire protection plan. You know, armed with that, I started going to, you know, the Siskiyou County mitigation. That's where I actually met Juliana. And I'm talking to two of the people that actually manage the grants for fire suppression. They're all agreement, you know, the fire danger that Dunsmuir is. And then someone comes up and says, oh, but you're not eligible because you've never signed a mitigation plan. And, you know, armed with that, we had to investigate, and it seems like Montague and Dunsmuir never signed on to any type of hazard mitigation plan. It's taken me 2 years to go through all of the bureaucracy you know, to actually, and then there were some changes with FEMA also, to get to the point where we applied and we were granted, you know, monies to write it. We have just filed, and I'm hoping to get to the point where the city finally has it and is eligible for all these federal monies that do not come with having to have a match.
Thank you. Matthew,
Read the question again.
if you could accomplish one thing in your 4 years on the city council, what would that be?
Well, when you think about 4 years and where I'd like the city to be, there are a lot of things that come to mind, but primarily it would be that in 4 years we have twice as many people involved in this process. That the people are listened to and that they feel that the city is going in the direction they hope for their city. I mean, there's difficult issues that we're grappling here with infrastructure, safety, or just basic cleanliness on some of our streets. We'd like progress to be made on that in a meaningful way, in a way where we don't start one program and then find we can't fund it and then have to cut it again, etc. That we can, at the end of 4 years, look back and say that people continue to get more involved and we're enabled to invest in the place they want to live.
Thank you. Juliana.
Thank you. One is really hard. Obviously, you guys know from the questions tonight, there's a lot of issues that are out there. I think the main one that I would focus on, and it's something that's really important to me, is planning for youth and families is really huge. For cities like Dunsmuir, Mount Shasta, you know, any small town throughout the United States, excuse me, they're going through what's called the brain drain, which is the younger people are leaving, going to college, and they're not coming back. And that's due to a lot of different reasons. That's due to none of the available jobs, affordable housing. But I think the biggest thing that we can do as Dunsmuirians is get them involved as youths, working with the Union School District to do more with our civics classes, to get our young people more involved with our committee work. The more they're involved with these committees and the more they're involved in their community, the more they're investing in that, and the more they see themselves living here and coming back here. Yeah, we don't have a 4-year university, so it's great to let them go there, but have them come back, start their own business, work for some of the jobs that are going to be opening up with retirements here in the city of Mount Shasta or in the county. But I think really connecting them to the community through volunteer work, through leadership programs, through civic, and really as a city council, I think we can easily do that working with the high schools and bringing the youth in and showing them you do matter. You're going to be the next decision makers. You're going to be the people who vote starting at 18. Let's get you used to being a part of this community and shaping that. And part of that also goes into the more you get the kids around here involved, the less likely they are to have those social issues that lead to addiction issues. As we know in Siskiyou County, opioid epidemics, heroin, even here in the city of Dunsmuir, we've had a lot of issues with drug use. Those don't happen overnight. A lot of that is people having issues in their social situations. I think working with the Union School District to build some more trust with the youth, more investment. Hopefully those kids who are at risk have an ability to have an outlet working with their community to make it better rather than resorting to drug use and other types of problem areas. So I think, you know, working with the youth, bringing families more into the planning aspect or to city council meetings could really improve the future of our city while getting our youth more invested and away from things we don't want them to be part of.
Thank you. Peter.
The one thing I would like to do, if I am elected, is help build a coalition around getting the California Theater back for the community of Dunsmuir. And I say that because I read the history books, and it was mostly the Masons and the workers at Southern Pacific, and they went around to every household in Dunsmuir asking for $100. It was a public subscription drive that built the California Theater, to me one of the finest extant historical theaters in Northern California. I've talked with people in Dunsmuir, their fondest memories are enjoying that theater. And now in the age of digital everything, it won't take that much to be able to have live performances on the bottom floor, to have film festivals and indie films on the upper stories, and we can do this. I would like to have the Blade sign lit up at the end of 12 months. I think it would be a beacon of hope for people that live here and people that come through. I'm a real estate guy. I'm an investor. I have no doubt that it can be done because we are starting to work with folks that were part of the Reading Cascade Theater restoration using Jefferson Public Radio and their foundation. It was a $6 million project. Ours will be less than that. But in my view, we are the missing tooth between Reading and Ashland and Portland and Seattle, and we can be the kind of community that offers our kids, our working families, and our elders a robust entertainment venue.
Thank you, Peter.
Let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay. How about a
Thank you.
5-minute, thank you, 5-minute break before? Folks, can we have your attention, please? I understand from some of the audience members that you folks need to speak up a little bit more because it's difficult for some of the people in the back to hear what you're saying.
Okay, great, thanks.
So, I know it's hard for you, but if you could speak up a little bit, it would be great.
I'm not using chat.
I know. Oh, that's okay. My cats can tell you. Don't do that.
I'm past my child rearing stage where that was probably not something my daughters wanted. I had it.
Okay, folks, are we ready? So here's the first question. I noticed the north part of Dunsmuir could use some redevelopment dollars. It always seems like the stepchild of Dunsmuir. Even with parades, it's passed over. What and why is that? Peter?
Well, I tend to agree with the observation, and why that is, I don't know. All I've observed in my 12 years here is a major disconnect between the citizens of Dunsmuir and their city government. And I would say that permeates down through traditional events like Railroad Days, Art Walk. We're still struggling to see the possibilities and to have the pride, so we don't feel like it's house by house or neighborhood by neighborhood. My hope is after the election, we start the discussions that make us feel like we are all informed and included. I think the eyesore that is the House of Glass needs to be dealt with sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Mine? Certainly. I noticed the north part of Dunsmuir could use some redevelopment dollars. It always seems like the stepchild of Dunsmuir. Even with parades, it's passed over. What and why is that?
I have no idea. It could be the 800-foot bridge between downtown and it could be the 800-foot bridge between the downtown or area and north. I have no idea. I don't live up there, and I don't have any way of gauging any possible answer.
Okay, thank you. Matthew, like me to read it again?
I think I understand the question.
Could we, quiet audience, please?
So as to why, I mean, there's a couple different theories. One would be that I-5's kind of an interesting part of Dunsmuir. We have tens of thousands of cars driving by each day right through our town. And I know it's a bridge that's easy enough to go under and then over, etc. But even if you look at the part of North Dunsmuir that's over on Siskiyou Avenue, that's a whole separate little area. It feels completely separate and neglected compared to the rest of North Dunsmuir on the other side of the freeway. So I think that, you know, we do have to use the advantage that the freeway is. It's a wonderful resource in terms of getting the word out about us. People can visit us without having to plan on being here and discover us along the way. But it might have been one of the disadvantages of having that freeway bisect our town, that it left North Dunsmuir to feel like a different location than Dunsmuir, generally speaking. What could be done about it? You know, I do think it does make sense to put all of our businesses in one area, especially if they cater to tourism. It's just it's a matter of having the same foot traffic benefit all the businesses. And I don't think people in North Dunsmuir necessarily want a bunch of businesses going in randomly in houses. So I do think it's nice that it's residential and residential only for the most part. But I do think if they're not feeling included, that certainly should be addressed at the city level.
Thank you. Juliana?
Yeah, so I was a North Dunsmuir resident. You know, I can break it down. There's a lot of different, I can't speak for why it seems it's been passed over. I haven't been involved in those decision-making processes, but I think a big reason why is we really don't have a lot of commercial businesses that cater to kind of more active uses. We don't really have any retail. We don't really have a restaurant up there, which that may be changing here in the future. The Castle Rock water bottling company has been sold. I guess sold is a word for it, but there's a new manager for that, so hopefully that'll turn into something a little bit more viable for North Dunsmuir to take a look at. I think when you take a look at it again, like I said, there's really not too many restaurants up there. I think there could be a focus for the city if that's something the residents want. So I don't know if that was written by a North Dunsmuir resident or not. I do appreciate our quieter neighborhoods up there, which I think some people might. But I think going back to Matthew and Peter, there does need to be some engagement and talk of maybe what do you feel you got passed over for? You know, do you want maybe a cafe up there to go and walk to on Sundays? Do you want, you know, a closer grocery store? I know there was a grocery store that was closer to North Dunsmuir that closed down, which is unfortunate. I'm a big walker, so I like to walk everywhere. That also is because I don't own a car. But, you know, I think, you know, having the dialogue and talking about, you know, what do you feel is needed up there needs to happen, and maybe there's some things we can do if elected to city council members, again, we don't necessarily do the work for the city in most cases, but we can always go out and ask the question of what do you feel you need up here? What are some things we can take a look at? Another big reason is North Dunsmuir does not have a lot of sidewalks. It's not very safe to walk up there if you're not paying attention 24/7, and especially from my experience walking now 8-month-old puppy that likes to go all over the place. You have to be pretty diligent on that up in North Dunsmuir. So, you know, there's a lot of things we can do. We can improve the walkability. We can look at investing in possibly having a cafe or restaurant that the residents can go to. But again, it's going to be really listening to what those North Dunsmuir residents need and want up there for the city to really respond to that.
Thank you. Speaking of North Dunsmuir, here's another question. What's going on with our water bottling plant? Will whatever new arrangement for our water bottling plant be beneficial to the city of Dunsmuir?
I can certainly speak to that.
Thank you.
Yes, it's extremely beneficial. Yes, it's extremely beneficial. We have a new wonderful tenant, and it is Kit and David from Etna Brewing. They're actually, when they bought the equipment, they also bought the brand name. So it's back in production. They're promoting the Castle Rock water. There was a big write-up for a film festival up at Fort Jones, featured the water. It appeared on Facebook, and I shared it everywhere. But they're going to be really great tenants. They not only are going to keep up water production, which brings in revenue, you know, in 2 different streams. One, the sale of the commercial water, and then the lease, you know, that is a revenue for the city. But they also have hopes of expanding. They've needed expansion of, you know, Etna Brewing, and they hope to be able to expand that down here in Dunsmuir. They are hoping that through the years, as they expand, they will be able to you know, have higher jobs and maybe, you know, more services you know, like a little pub. I know that people that know Etna and have ever gone there, you know, it's you know, you should actually go and visit it. So yes, it is extremely beneficial. I also want to know the kind of tenant that they're going to be, because we've had a problem with the past tenant, and before they would even close their escrow, they told the former tenant that all the back rent had to be paid back to the city before they would close escrow. And that is the kind of tenants that we need in Dunsmuir.
Thank you, Lottie. Juliana, do you have any comment on the water bottling plant?
That's pretty much just what I've heard as well, and that's why I kind of referenced it in the North Dunsmuir answer before.
Okay, thank you. Matthew?
I just wanted to, I guess, appreciate the number of jobs that can sustain, that one thing alone. So when it wasn't operating, we had 20 plus, I hear as many as 25 people in its full operation that it can run, and we're back on track for that, and that's wonderful for them.
Peter?
Well, it makes me feel like an old person, because when I was on the city council and acted as mayor, Alan Harvey was the city manager, and we all worked together effectively to get the Coca-Cola company to give the bottling plant, the city owns the property. The bottling plant, Coca-Cola said, take it. It's kind of a rundown piece of junk anyway. And the city gave up $25,000 a year. Coca-Cola was paying $25,000 for the water rights they didn't even use. And the promise was 30 to 60 jobs and revenue from selling our artesian water, and it was all going to be beautiful, and none of it came to pass. The city did a terrible job in choosing the tenant and letting things go into default, and that apparently is the big hole in our budget that keeps us from being able to do anything. So 10 years down the road, I'm pleased that we're doing a do-over, and a shout out to Bryce Craig, who is retiring from city office, because in 2019, I expect that we will have a Mossbury Trail, a legal, open to the public Mossbury Trail that will partner with the Hedge Creek Trail and be a boon. The bottling plant, which is small scale glass bottles, revenue to the city, plus 2 trails to walk, I think that's going to be very good for us.
Thank you, Peter. Next question. Do any of you have any ideas or plans about the Travelers Hotel, and if there is a way to seek funds to bring it into compliance with California code so that it will attract investors? Matthew?
Sure. It's a very difficult case because it's quite dilapidated, on the verge of being condemned in its interior, is my understanding. And I haven't heard an exact dollar amount on what it would take to renovate it in any form, but I do know it's in the several million range and upwards. So to expect someone to come in here because of their own vision and invest in it, it doesn't seem like the numbers work out particularly well for that to happen first in Dunsmuir. I would certainly welcome it, and I do know people are on a fairly routine basis expressing interest in the building because we all see the potential it has. And it's an important landmark in Dunsmuir, and nothing would please me more than to put it to use. But it's going to be about finding the right private partner and being as supportive as we can as anybody who has interest comes through, and telling them what we can do to assist them in finding grants and working with them on some issues like parking and other issues relating to the city that might need to be readjusted for their new usage.
Thank you, Matthew. Peter?
I'm sort of chomping at the bit. Anybody that wants to buy the hotel, I understand you could get it as cheaply as a couple $100,000. At the end of the day, that is a huge property, once one of the biggest hotels in southern Siskiyou County, 55 units. The city can't figure out how to add a single unit of housing, and there are 55 units sitting empty. My first choice would be to work with the California Department of Veteran Affairs and the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs and make it supportive housing for veterans. I would put covered parking on the first level with veteran-owned businesses, and then I would have veteran housing in the upper floors. If that doesn't work, then use the power of the city to borrow low-cost funds for economic redevelopment, pair it with the theater, and we will be a beautiful community.
Thank you, Peter. Lottie? Yes. Do any of you have any ideas or plans about the Travelers Hotel, and if there is a way to seek funds to bring it into compliance with California code so that it will attract investors?
I tend to agree with Matthew. It's private property. I've heard figure up to $5 million, to try to renovate it. Yes, and Peter, I agree. A few $100,000 will buy you the property, and another $5 million to try to do something with it. It's been, close to escrow quite a few times since I've been in Dunsmuir. Something happens all the time. There's a lack of parking. There's, I think the biggest cost is what do you do with a huge building and renovate it. I don't really have any answers. I'm not in real estate. It's a public building. It is a concern of everybody that lives in Dunsmuir. Two huge properties that are sitting empty, deteriorating more and more. The other one, up in the north end of Dunsmuir, but they're both private properties, and the city is not a big city with lots of resources they could spend on this. I think it will take the energy of someone like Peter, who has renovated lots of buildings. Somebody in real estate that could work with private investors. But as a city, we have not found any solutions for what to do with private properties.
Thank you, Lottie. Juliana?
Thank you. Excuse me. Similar to what Peter was talking about, there is an opportunity for maybe some creative solutions, finding certain partners, whether it be through the VA. There's actually a really big push right now by the public health associations and public health at the state level, looking for more housing for memory care units, as well as aging populations, supporting people who don't necessarily want to have larger houses anymore, who may need a closer nursing assistance for any type of ailments, end of life. There are some creative things that people have done, retrofitting old hotel buildings, working with those types of big partners. But again, kind of in agreement with Mari, the city can't do it alone. We're going to have to reach out to those bigger partners who have the expertise in setting up those spaces, working with people who have an ability or an access to capital that could do that. But I think like I said, there's always an opportunity to reach out to those and see what the options are. Grant opportunities are a little bit more difficult in this case if you're building back a hotel, but if you bring in some of these more special populations like the VA, public health, there are more opportunities for funding related to rehabilitating those larger buildings. And again, going back to the housing issue that we have, it would make sense to probably do what would be called a mixed-use building, having maybe some be hotel rooms, but some could also be long-term residential units. Yes, parking is an issue, but when you start looking at some of the other amenities around there, we could do a type of looking for off-site parking solutions, as well as just promoting types of people who don't have a car. Like I said, as people get older, you may not want to drive anymore. If you're close to your grocery store, you're close to other amenities and cafes, it incentivizes not wanting to drive. And so maybe trying to work with the special type of populations that need different types of housing, different types of consideration could help with rehabilitating that. If we did find a hotel developer, that'd be amazing, but I don't foresee that happening anytime soon.
Thank you. When or if when will we have a code enforcement officer? Marty?
I wish I could tell you a date, but unfortunately I can't. The city right now employs 11 full-time. It has 11 full-time employees and 2 part-time. There has been movement, to put a code enforcement officer, actually it's more animal control. And then last year, which I am gratified that we have a city manager that does look at the bottom line and our fiscal responsibilities, because we had such a deficit from the tenant that was in the bottling plant. He held back because we were going to not meet our obligations. Yeah, the budget has already been set for this fiscal year. Come February, we're going to be revisiting the, start the budget process. Hopefully, these new mandates that are coming from the state with no way to pay for them, will not stop us, from going in that direction. There's always these new mandates, and they keep coming from the water boards, and it comes down to whether we have a balanced budget and look forward to the future, or we're, like any household, we're running up a credit card and no way to pay it off. I am proud of our city manager, and I'm proud of our financial manager. They're keeping Dunsmuir in the right direction.
Thank you. Juliana?
Thank you. As far as code enforcement, there has been a discussion between municipalities in the past, and I think it was brought up earlier, about sharing the cost of a code enforcer. It is difficult for the smaller cities to do that. Even Mount Shasta, with the resources they have, we don't have a code enforcement officer full-time either. There could be an opportunity for cost sharing between those 3. I know right now Dunsmuir, Mount Shasta, and a couple of other cities have Dave Smith, who's the building inspector for around here. He works on a contract basis, and so obviously there could be an opportunity to look into something like that, as well as cost sharing with the county. That we have had a discussion there as well. There are some possibilities with that. It's not an easy thing to find a budget for a salaried employee. You think it's just, just the pay, but it's having a pay that's competitive for someone who's going to want to do that job. And if you think about code enforcement, it's very similar to police in that you're probably not dealing with people at their best time. And nobody wants to be told to put their dog on a leash, even if it is the safe thing to do in most cases. So I think there's going to be a challenge to finding that constant budgetary item. Because one thing the city, if elected to city council, one thing I wouldn't want to do is have 1 year of a successful program and then have it fall away because we can't continue to fund that position. That's really not helping anyone. So I think cost sharing is probably going to be our best bet for, getting that type of position. As stated earlier, it's an issue in a lot of different cities. So getting someone on either a quarter-time or part-time basis and sharing that would benefit the city by just incrementally helping with that enforcement issue.
Thank you. Matthew?
Yeah, I think underlying all this is the issue with cutting programs or trying to raise revenue. We really should focus a certain amount of our energy on increasing the amount we can generate for the general fund. We would definitely benefit from having someone to go out and do code enforcement in Dunsmuir. And the more competitive we can be in all of our employment options for city workers, the higher caliber people we'll find. But Dunsmuir is also special, and people sometimes want to live here. We all experience that. And I think it's not impossible to, given time, find the correct fit. Maybe someone who does part-time code enforcement and part-time snow plowing or utilities. As we have to work to problem solve to get to where we need to go as fast as we can, without losing track of things or spending too much on one thing and having to cut it the next year, as Juliana pointed out. But I do think we should prioritize things that are important, that are going to slowly help us generate more for the general fund. Because if we're constantly focusing on cutting things that are productive for our town, we could end up with a spiral where we're just cutting constantly. We want to turn that around and grow a little bit and be solvent. Take the money, invest into the next step. And that's the goal of all of us here, but I do think that should be the focus, is sustaining future growth. You know, it can be slow, but it should be sustained.
Thank you. Peter?
I agree with Matthew and Juliana. I think it's totally unacceptable that the city does not have a code enforcement officer, so if I am elected, this will be one of the highest priorities for the city of Dunsmuir as we go into the year 2019. If the city of Weed, I have the circular, it's a $55,000 a year job, because you need qualifications. If you've got a neighbor with a vicious dog biting on somebody on the other side of the fence, it's not something for an ordinary citizen to take on. You need someone that can work smoothly with the sheriff, can work with the citizens of Dunsmuir, but to simply say we have laws about public safety and we're not going to enforce them because we don't have anybody. If you go to City Hall and complain, nothing happens. And that's not okay with me. So we will have a code enforcement officer and we will figure out how to pay for it.
Thank you, Peter. Next question. How will you guarantee, or will you guarantee that designated funds stay in their particular fund? For example, water funds need to stay in the water infrastructure fund and not borrowed from or put into the general fund. Juliana?
So as far as those enterprise funds, there are rules around what it can be spent on. It has to be spent on that service related to it. So water has to be spent on water, sewer on sewer. There are little loopholes about there are certain amounts that you can take out of those funds for the purchase of equipment if it's shared. But as far as it going forward, you know, one of the questions was about our infrastructure needing a lot of assistance. So I don't think it's appropriate to take funds out of an enterprise area that's in dire need of more funding. That doesn't really make sense. And frankly, it should be the other way around. It should be the city prioritizing that general fund for assisting in certain projects related to those infrastructure areas. So, you know, I don't support the use of funds going into other areas, or it's not really that they go into other areas, they go into the purchase of things that may not be totally related to that. And do in most cases have to be paid back. It's just not a good financial practice to go through for government financing. So I would agree that those enterprise funds have to stay where they are and pay for those facilities and infrastructure needs that they have.
Thank you. Matthew?
I agree that it should be fairly simple. You know, the water rates should pay for the water with a certain amount in reserve. The sewer should pay for the sewer with whatever amount deemed reliable in the reserve, and solid waste as well. Now, what you define as one or the other, you know, there are legal boundaries to that, I believe, set by the state, and the town should adhere to the state rules with that. As far as that's concerned, that's my position. How would we enforce it? You know, the city council as a whole would be in charge of having review of what the city has done with its finances and whether it's inappropriate or not. And it seems to me like a little bit of effort from our city attorney could clarify these issues. We could move forward with a little bit more transparency.
Thank you, Matthew. Lottie?
First of all, I'd like to dispel this, whoever's promulgated that the city transfers monies from one fund to the other. It may have happened sometime in the past, but I can assure you it does not happen right now. I sit on the finance committee. Water enterprise pays for water enterprise projects. There is no commingling of funds. I can't speak to what may have happened 20 years ago, but it does not happen right now. Water rates pay for water-related, you know, actions in the water enterprise. Sewer, last year, there was a move to the sewer enterprise actually has two funds. One for, it was put together quite a few years ago by the citizens that worked on the some rate in infrastructure, and they set aside a fund, or specifically asked for a fund where the sewer improvement would be, and one is the general operating cost. You know, for a simple accounting practice, wanted to use, join the two funds. And I read the thick manual of, everything that went on. The citizens' involvement, and my whole attitude was that when we do things like that, we break the trust of the citizens that have worked towards a certain goal. I fortunately had the deciding vote, and the funds were not commingled. The operating cost stays in that fund, and the improvement funds are still sitting in there. If my suggestion was that if they wanted funds from one fund, that they can ask for a loan, have the paperwork legally where the funds, one fund can draw from the other, but it didn't go. So monies are still there, but I can assure you that I don't need to guarantee the enterprise funds do not commingle their resources.
Thank you. Peter?
Well, I think Maury's answer tells you all you need to know. The city feels comfortable borrowing from the enterprise funds. I can't speak to 20 years ago, but when I showed up 10 years ago and Dunsmuir was a ghost town, the transit occupancy tax revenues were headed south. The sales tax revenues were headed south. Here's the city manager and the city council trying to make payroll for the city staff. Where are they going to get the cash? They would borrow from the enterprise funds. And it would be not written down. Was it a loan? Was it, we'll just inflate the administrative costs of the city staff and charge it to the fund? But the bottom line is, I don't know if there's any citizen participation in overseeing the city. When I was on the council, we had a citizen committee with Rich Chan and others, and we watched to make sure that the city was not transferring funds from the enterprise to the general fund. After I was recalled, that citizen committee went away, and I think the city went back to its bad old ways. It's very hard for the city to get a clean audit. The city tends to get qualified audits because it's kind of a funky deal, the way revenues get transferred between the the three enterprise funds and the general fund. I understand the city felt comfortable borrowing Proposition P funds that should have funded the library to do something else. That's what the city does in the last 12 months. Eventually they paid it back, but I would say, number one, we need citizen participation. Sunshine is the best disinfectant. The city should publish its audit every year to assure us. And if water and sewer and solid waste rates are going to go up, this is a very important issue where we all have to have confidence in one another.
Thank you, Peter.
Actually, I feel pretty honored to have to...
No, not at this point. We're going to have closing statements now, and because we're running out of time. So Juliana, closing statement to our audience.
Thank you. As I said before, I am a newer resident to the area, but the story I tell is when I first got here, I was thankful to have a boss who let me drive to the different cities, and I was in Weed for about 20 minutes and I was good. And I came down to Dunsmuir, and I ended up spending half a day in Dunsmuir and then coming back the next day and just exploring the old buildings and the businesses. And since I got here, I've always felt that Dunsmuir was just much more like home, and the people here have a lot of gumption. You don't come and say, I need very often, at least what I found with the people who live here. And there's a really great sense of camaraderie and willingness to help each other. And I think that's why I've approached this position, is I really want to bring my technical background, my understanding, and my networks at the state and federal level to really help Dunsmuir see this future that I think it's always been deserving of, but it has just been slightly out of reach. And I think there's a lot of people who have energy that needs to be channeled a little bit more effectively into the public process and start to listen more and reach out. And like I said, I understand that the city council member is not a city employee, but we can do everything in our power to reach out to you and talk to you and see what the needs of the city are and check on that. We shouldn't have to wait for a city council meeting to ask the question of what does the public really want out of this. I really hope that I can live up to the expectations if elected to city council, and I hope that I can do a great job representing you, not just as a council member if I get in that. Even if I lose, I hope I represent Dunsmuir as a great resident and an example of where we're going in the future and the investment that we all deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew.
Yes, thank you. I'm very proud to call this canyon my home. I've loved it for many, many years, and it's a real joy to live here the last 2 years. And what I'd be very proud to serve you guys as city councilor. I don't have a lifetime of experience in law or finance, but I am college educated. I have a bachelor's degree, and I can give all my energy and purpose and common sense to attain Dunsmuir's goal of just greater safety for our town and greater prosperity. I would really be honored to serve you guys in that capacity. I've enjoyed all the people I've got to know in this campaign. People of Dunsmuir care about their town. They have common hopes and concerns, and I look forward, if elected, to helping them attain those hopes and helping mitigate some of those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Peter?
Well, I'll simply say, good for the four of us for being willing to try to make our community a better place. Good for all of you that came tonight. You have enough of an interest in the future of your little city in the canyon, and I'm sure the four of us, if we were just talking to one another, it wouldn't be much of an evening. So thank you for coming. Matthew opened on how much potential the city has. I added how much pride we have, and I think that carries us forward. When I was honored with the Alexander Dunsmuir Award a couple years ago, I saluted the women of the community of Dunsmuir. This is a community that has strong, strong people in it. And I don't know if it's because of the railroad routes or being in a rural, not wealthy community. We're survivors. I think we've got each other's back. And the chance for us to do great things in the day ahead is sitting right here. So thank you very much for coming. I hope you vote for me. But whoever you vote for, get out there and vote.
Thank you, Peter. Marty?
I would like to thank the audience. I would also like to thank the voters that elected me in 2 years ago, and I hope that they re-elect me to finish what I started doing. I think the city has changed drastically in the last 3 years. We have one of the most open administrations and totally transparent. The books are always open. They're even published online. Anybody can come to any of the meetings. They're always published. There's total transparency, which was not what I found when I first came here. We have a great city staff, and the people of Dunsmuir, are looking forward, to continuity, to make, keep the progress that we're making. I've been accused of all sorts of things in the last few weeks, that I consider the city poor, but all of my words come out of context. I think that the city is generous and not poor in spirit. Its resources might be challenged, but I chose to live here. I didn't just accidentally come through here. It was by choice. And it will continue to be by choice. I participated in, before I joined the council, I participated in all sorts of volunteer efforts, and I still do. And this is a city that is widely known. It became what it became because of the volunteer efforts. And I hope that the volunteers continue to do that. And I happen to agree with Peter. This is a city where the women are the ones that have actually made some of these succeed. The botanical gardens, the garden club, the Tondali Park, all of these great assets now to our community, and Sam, have all been women that have started it, have run it, that staff it, and volunteer for it.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the audience for attending, and I want to encourage all of you to attend city council meetings. And I know the current city council is always very happy to answer any questions we have. So please vote and attend your city council meetings if you have any other questions.
Thanks to the library for being with us.
And I'd also like to thank Tim Holt for helping facilitate the questions. And I wish all of you the best. I think that we have a wonderful group of candidates, and I think no matter who's elected, everyone has an optimistic attitude toward our future. Thank you.